Hello, my name is Calvin Thomas, and this is my presentation for Educational Technology CS6460 on how technology combined with educational theory can be used to improve the quality of catechesis in the Lutheran Church. As catechesis is not necessarily overly familiar to people, I just thought I'd begin with an explanation of what actually catechesis is. So it is the process of instructing catechumens, which is those who are defined as new converts to Christianity, receiving instruction in basic doctrines of the Christian faith. It dates all the way back to biblical times. It's commonly used as a rite for confirmation within the Catholic and the Lutheran Church. My research focused on three key areas, the first being a review of the current materials used for catechesis from various areas, followed by some surveys, 40 of which were completed by catechists or teachers, and 11 which were completed by catechumens or the students. Following this, there were much more significant in-depth interviews conducted with catechists and catechumens. There were 9 of these, 5 with catechumens and 4 with catechists. The material review was conducted based on quality, cost, educational theory applicability, and what medium was used. Most of the materials were found through Concordia Publishing House, a large publishing house related to Lutheranism, and also through lutherancatechism.com, a website dedicated to promoting the use of Luther's catechisms. Some other resources were found by looking in app stores, through Google, and through survey responses. The surveys were conducted via Google Forms, and they were specifically targeted at current or previous catechumens and catechists. The interviews were conducted via a variety of methods at the preference of the interviewee. This meant technology was used in the likes of WhatsApp and email, along with in-person interviews and over the phone. The review of current material showed the use of technology was relatively rare, with most resources still based on paper. Most of the materials are aimed at children. The most likely reason for this is based on the rite of confirmation, usually taking place between about the ages of 11 and 14 within the Lutheran Church. A lot of the materials feel quite old-fashioned, partly but this is based on the fact they're paper-based, but also some of the imagery in them looks quite old, and there doesn't seem to be a huge amount of updated modern materials. Having said that, there are some examples of really high-quality materials out there. There's a Lutheran Catechism application, although the application is relatively basic in that it only allows really for the reading of the catechism. The formatting is nice, it looks modern, and it's well put together. There's an excellent online tutorial series now on the catechism based on a great book by Pastor Fisk called Echo. This is similar in some senses to the courses taught in massively online courses. And finally, there is a site, lutherancatechism.com, that's dedicated to promoting Luther's catechisms. Now moving on to the survey results. A key part of catechesis is the memorization of parts of the catechism. It's seen as an important factor and often used in the rite of confirmation. The 6 main or chief parts are the 10 Commandments, the Creed, the Lord's Prayer, the Sacrament of Holy Baptism, Confession, and the Sacrament of the Altar. These are followed by 3 other parts: daily prayers, table of duties, and Christian questions and their answers. The graphs presented here slide from left to right from the more common parts over to Christian questions and their answers. The graph at the top relates to catechumens and the graph at the bottom relates to catechists. As can be seen, all parts are considered important, but the first parts, the main texts, are considered particularly important, considered as very important by both catechists and catechumens alike. This importance placed on memorization shows that it is important for this to be considered in any future approaches to catechesis. This set of graphs relates to different methods used during memorization. The 2 graphs on the left relate to the catechist answers, and the 2 graphs on the right relate to the catechumens. The first method, daily reading and repetition, is the one that is most commonly used within catechesis learning at the moment, and you can see that most people believe this to be a very effective method. However, when it comes to the enjoyment aspect, particularly with the students, there is a lot more people who consider the method to be slightly unengaging. Memory cards, informal quizzes or tests, competitive quizzes, and games, all of them are generally considered that they would be effective and enjoyable. However, none are deemed as effective as the daily reading or repetition. What we see here is an interesting inverse relationship between what's most enjoyable and what would be most effective. However, the results do correspond quite positively for some of the educational theories I'm considering, such as formative assessment, which would fit in well with informal quizzes or tests, and adding gamification elements to the memorization process. Moving on to the idea of using technology within memorization, all options were popular. What we see is that the use of a mobile app over the use of online systems is slightly more popular. The belief here is that this is mostly due to the accessibility aspects, and also that mobile phones are simply more popular these days than using a web-based application. There was a slight disconnect between students and teachers with regards to voice-based assistants. All students thought that using these would be a good idea. However, over 50% were unsure who were actual teachers. This may be due to lack of knowledge of the actual technology. The next section I considered was understanding the catechism. So the main things with catechesis, first of all, is the memorization, and then secondly, it's to give students a real understanding of the Christian faith. My main focus here was to see if we could get any information on the effectiveness of other educational theories, such as discussion-based learning, problem-based learning, and formative assessment. The first option I provided, application to everyday life, was deliberately put in here as one that leads mostly towards problem-based learning. As can be seen, this was very popular with both catechists and catechumens, and was also commented on quite strongly in more free format responses, with this being a key thing that people believed are missing from catechesis currently. Discussion with catechists was partly related to discussion-based learning, but also is the traditional method used within catechesis currently. As can be seen, it was hugely popular, the most popular of the lot with both students and teachers, and is certainly something that should continue to be used going forwards. The other options were also popular. They weren't as popular as the first two, but they still show good merit for possibility of inclusion in any catechesis lessons. Further readings or research was one that related particularly to problem-based learning, and it was interesting to see that there was a desire for this from both teachers and students. The other two options, discussions with other catechumens and potentially teaching others, could be involved in a discussion-based learning approach. The next key part for me was in confirming understanding. This is commonly done currently by discussions with the catechist, either in a one-on-one or a group setting. The most obvious approach for formative assessment, along with these discussions, is the informal tests or quizzes, as is commonly used in online courses. It can be seen here that there's a very positive approach to these, and therefore this is something that's highly worth considering going forwards. In the interviews, I focused in much more depth on the areas that I was particularly considering for use within catechesis, namely spaced repetition and gamification, discussion-based learning, problem-based learning, and formative assessment. The reaction to spaced repetition and gamification was almost overwhelmingly positive, with most interviewees seeing this as a method that could be used to be more effective and more enjoyable for catechists. The exact methodology around reward systems within gamification was a little bit more widespread in opinions. The key factor seemed to be, however, that the reward should be based for correct understanding rather than for things like speed. Another popular idea was around rewarding continued use, either through completing a certain number of activities per day or completing at least one activity per day. It was believed that this was most likely to encourage people to continue with their studies. In terms of technology for this, most people believed a mobile app would be the best option, predominantly again based on the fact that it'd be available everywhere and that this could then be used on things like commutes. Discussion-based learning was very popular. However, translating this over to technology seemed more difficult. Most people believed that using a one-on-one face-to-face discussion or possibly a group discussion face-to-face would be more effective and more enjoyable. However, there was consideration that particularly for those who are quite shy or struggle to speak in public, it may be very beneficial to be able to answer questions in a not so public manner. The exact technology choices varied quite considerably, with some thinking that social media was an excellent place for it to be and some thinking it was a terrible place for it to be. Given this, it would need a lot more further research to work out what actually was the best overall option for this. Problem-based learning was again very popular. This came through from the applicability to everyday life and the desire for continued learning, which came through from both catechists and catechumens. This is a positive sign for catechesis going forwards and suggests that it could be used a lot wider than just in the lessons it's currently used as part of confirmation. Interviewees were always able to come up with questions that they would want answered themselves and believe that technology could be a suitable tool for some of these, particularly in terms of the research and also in terms of answering questions, either through giving written answers or just through discussions. Formative assessment was also well received, with different methods believed to be appropriate. Most interviewees liked the idea of informal tests or quizzes to help to aid understanding at the basic level, but also with some further deeper questions available for further consideration. There were two main concerns raised during the interviews. The first was generally of the use of technology in general, and the second was on the removal of the role of parents. There was some overlap between the two based on the idea that the use of technology would remove parents from needing to be involved within catechesis. The first of these was highlighted by 2 of the 9 participants, who generally tended to favour traditional approaches and saw the use of technology more as a gimmick that would grow old and that we should continue to use traditional methods that have worked over time. The removal of the role of the parents was highlighted by all catechists, with each highlighting the importance of the parent's role in effective catechesis. This is combined with general research into the area that highlights that parental involvement in education does lead to greater educational outcomes. And so it is important for technology and its uses to be combined with traditional methods in order to be most effective. Which leads me to my final part, which is on recommendations. The key thing here is to combine technology with traditional methods. There was a positive response throughout to the different methods and the use of technology, particularly with regard to mobile apps. However, it was also highlighted that they shouldn't replace traditional methods and that the most appropriate approach would be a blended learning approach with both catechism classes, parental involvement, and the use of technology to aid this. There's a significant desire for continued learning that just doesn't seem to be overly available at the moment. Problem-based learning and discussion-based learning open up avenues, particularly in this area, for more advanced students. And combining this with technology would make it more readily available. As previously alluded to, the involvement of parents is seen as a critical factor, and so any solution needs to bring these along with us. The most popular method in both the surveys and in the interviews was the use of a mobile app. The prevalence and availability of it mean that this is the right solution to go for currently. Thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoyed the presentation.